Okay. All right, folks. We will begin. Since it is streaming media, yes, we are streaming live. So this should be an interesting panel. Online distribution, monetization strategies for the TV industry. What I like to do in my panels, I like to have a good representative mix of different players in the ecosystem. So I will let the panelists give their background themselves. I want to keep things very short at the beginning so we have plenty of time for the substance, because there's a lot of good substance here. And then at the end, I'll save 5 to 10 minutes for questions. And I like to keep things interactive too, so don't hesitate. So to begin, my name is Peter Ciotti. I'm the CEO of Manat Digital Media Ventures. And very briefly, what we are is we're a professional services firm that does work for the digital media and technology world. We have legal services, but I'm on the business side, and we also do early stage venture capital. So I look for digital media and technology investments. I've been in the media business for almost 25 years, about half of which was in the media companies, small independent studios, as well as Universal Studios, so some of the majors. And then in the last 10 years, I've been in the digital media side, working and running 4 different digital media companies. So that's my background. Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Sutherland. I'm the VP of Content Development at USA Network, and we create content for all of USA Network's original series and derivative series.
Hi, good morning. My name is Paul Cochran. I'm the head of lifestyles and entertainment for Yahoo Studios, which is where we create all our original in-house productions. My background started in the most traditional media of all, newspapers back in England, where I was a local newspaper reporter, and gradually moved up the ranks through television, traditional sort of linear broadcast television, and for the last 5 years been working in digital, and so got some really interesting insights about the differences there.
My name is David Totterman. I'm the head of digital media for Innovative Artists, which is a Hollywood talent agency, one of a small number of talent agencies that's operating a full-service digital media division. I also come from traditional media. I was in television. I was a television producer and executive for 12 years, working on primetime sitcoms mostly. And then when everything went to reality, I was fortunate to get into digital very early, which led to living through the VC boom and the startups that were getting funded. And then when the talent agency started moving into this area, Innovative asked me to come in and start a digital division for them, and that's how I wound up inside a talent agency.
I'm Mara Winokur. I run the digital group at Stars Entertainment, Stars Media. That means that we do the distribution in all formats of digital content that is owned by the channel or our other divisions. Just to clarify, we do not do the digital licensing of the linear channel, so don't ask me about the old Netflix Stars Play deal. That wasn't mine. And I've been doing digital for, despite my youthful glow, probably 15 years. Before this, I was in music companies, so I've witnessed the rise and fall.
Great. Thanks, Mara. So we have a great panel, lots of different perspectives, so let's dig right in. And Paul, I'm going to ask you this question, since you come from both the traditional side and also now you're at Yahoo. The name of the panel is Online Distribution and Monetization Strategies for the TV Industry. So what is the TV industry these days?
I guess that's a really, really interesting question, because traditionally you think of television as that big box in the living room. And when I first started working in digital media, I thought, well, isn't this great? Now we can just take all this content that's already been produced for television and just put it online, and people are going to come in there millions and millions to consume it, because it's going to be much more readily available, and access to it is going to be much easier. But very, very quickly, you find that that model doesn't work. The way that people consume media in the digital space is completely different. And even when we started looking at like these half-hour, hour-long formats and said, well, we'll just chop them up and we'll make them shorter, because that's what people want. They want shorter content. And that didn't work either. And it was really interesting to see the evolution of, the digital video space as becoming its own unique content category and own unique genre, which needs to be programmed according to the audience behavior. And the audience behavior is really about not necessarily the device that they're watching it on. We talk a lot about, what's the video experience on mobile or tablet or desktop or even in the living room. the way that I kind of look at it is it's not about the device, it's about the people's mindset when they're actually consuming that content. So you think about when you're at work and you're on your desktop and you're probably checking that your boss isn't watching behind you and you want to check out a piece of video, that kind of experience that you want is completely different to the experience that you want in your living room. And even, I'm sure we've all done it where we're consuming these long-form pieces of content now on tablet devices sat on our sofa at home, and you'll sit there for 30 minutes watching it because, the wife's watching Gossip Girl on the TV and you don't like Gossip Girl. But, so it's not really about the device or the content, it's about the mindset that you're in when you're consuming that media.
So Jessica and Mara, you're both with the cable companies and networks, USA and Stars. Do you agree that with the way that Paul described just the way we think of the television industry? Or how do you look at it? Do you look at it similarly or differently than that kind of view of the world?
I mean, for us, we're always looking at not only what our fans want, which is generally more of the characters that they love. I mean, our network's all about characters welcome, and we try to sort of play that through in all aspects of the brand, whether it be digital or on air or anywhere else. But I think we're generally looking at a variety of different things when we create content, and that is, what are stories that we can tell that wouldn't otherwise be told? We have only 43 minutes generally in an episode, so and we know that our showrunners have so much more that they want to say about a particular storyline. So we're trying to deliver something extra to the user or to the viewer. And then we're also looking at their generally their second screen behavior when they're watching. And every show is different. What might work for Graceland or for Burn Notice doesn't work for Covert Affairs or Necessary Roughness. So we're looking at the differences in audiences, the differences in the themes within the shows, the time frame, the usage of a second screen device. So it's a lot of things that go into creating. And then, of course, we partner with brands to create a lot of this content, so it's melding all of those things.
Right. And I want to get into that a little bit later because I think that's interesting too, just from a monetization standpoint and targeting and the great promise that we've all been thinking about for years. Mara, how about you?
I think I generally agree with Paul. The television industry is a broader term than it used to be, and whether or not everybody embraces that, I think, is up to a channel-by-channel basis. I'm sure some channels will say, no, this is TV, everything else is online or it's mobile, but really it's the content, and it's different content. I do think it is for different platforms, but it's also for different segments. Some people want the short form and they want it on their mobile. I happen to want the long form on my TV. I don't want to watch it anywhere else, and that's what I watch. But TV has almost become, it's sort of it's an anachronistic title for what is really the video industry.
Yeah, no, I think that's right.
Yeah.
When I think of the video space and all that's happening in the multi-platform world, it's premium video content. That's really what it is. And that's why, just from a title perspective, the name is pretty interesting here, because I don't think any of us really think of it that way. So let's also go at a high level with another term of art that is in this premium online video space, and that's MCNs, multi-channel networks. And you may have heard of them. I don't know how many people really know that much about them, but the concept of MCNs is here. It's growing fast. And David, why don't you give us a little bit of background of what they are?
Well, the handful of MCNs, which is growing, by the way, I mean, essentially it stands for multi-channel networks, and at the heart, that's what they are. They aggregate, and to be fair, this is really specific to YouTube. This is not specific to television content per se, though certain television networks also operate YouTube channels. The concept of MCN really does refer to the aggregation of audience on YouTube. Individual YouTube creators that have their channels, the MCNs have sort of been created essentially to aggregate audience and drive brand dollars towards these individual channels by aggregating that audience, selling it to advertisers. The major MCNs, I think, are all going about it a little bit of a different way. I think at this point, any company in our space essentially views themselves as a media company, and they should. For instance, there's a big difference between a company like Fullscreen, which started out having one of their key value propositions be their tech enabler. They were essentially an amplifier. They were able to drive bigger audiences towards your individual YouTube channel. Whereas Maker Studios was more aggregating big talent channels. Now, what you've seen over the past year is a lot of influence, a lot of influx of funding into these channels by big media companies. It's a natural progression. There are big audiences online. The money's going to follow the audience. The brands are going to follow the audience, and that's kind of where the business is sitting right now with regarding to YouTube. What I think as an MCN is a very interesting model is Awesomeness TV. If you've heard of them, they were started by DreamWorks. Actually, excuse me, they were acquired by DreamWorks. And Awesomeness TV has a very, very specific focus, focusing at the tween girls market online. Not only do they aggregate channels, but they're doing something that I think is more important, which is they're also programming to their audience. I think the place where we are right now in the MCN universe is we've got to move beyond aggregation. Monetization is going to require programming. It's also going to require moving this content off YouTube to more monetizable platforms. For those of you who have kept up with this, YouTube takes a 45% revenue split on all advertising revenue. So if you're an MCN, 45% of your ad income is already going to YouTube. And then when you think beyond that, that you then have to also make a split with the creators, let's assume that's a sort of a 70-30 split, which is fairly standard. Your margin, if you're an MCN, is actually pretty small. And so the way the MCNs are going about competing in this media economy is by trying to drive their audience off YouTube to other platforms where they can fully monetize. Now that, I think, also has its challenges because, assuming that YouTube essentially is an audience platform and that these talent channels on YouTube that become part of these MCNs are audience driven, right? I mean, your channels are only going to be as successful as the audience that you can drive to your channel. I think the next step is going to be to see how these channels can drive their audience off YouTube to other channels. It might be great for your margins, but you also have to make sure that it's a good experience for the audience.
So you mentioned YouTube and the revenue splits. There's been, as you said, a lot of talk about the revenue splits and the economics of content and premium video content on YouTube. And for those of you who follow Jason Calacanis, there was a blog probably about 6 months ago or so that was very well traveled. It was the title was, "I Ain't Gonna Work on YouTube's Farm No More." And essentially what the bottom line was, he had an exclusive deal with YouTube, and YouTube had some exclusive deals where they invested quite a bit of money. They invested, I think, overall $300 million into the initial companies that were creating premium video content for it. But there was significant traffic for Calacanis's network of programming. But at the end of the day, he didn't feel that the economics made sense for him. And so I ask each of you, because I want to keep things a little spicy here. When you look at YouTube, Jessica, how does YouTube play into your strategy, if at all? Do you consider them to be a friend or a foe? What do you think?
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Officially, the official answer is YouTube is obviously a huge and valuable partner to us, especially when it comes to promotional materials and clip distribution. So we have obviously YouTube channels with which we, seed out that promotional content. In terms of full episodes and webisodes and other content, we have obviously Hulu, which is a partial owned company by NBC Universal and obviously other companies. And so we have parity with them. So the content is a little bit different based on the platform and based on the deal that we have with Hulu. But I think in terms of eyeballs, you just can't, you can't not work with YouTube.
It is the biggest distribution platform. Paul, how about you and Yahoo?
Yeah. Well, I guess.
And by the way, Jessica said officially, so
Right.
I wonder what the unofficial is.
We can talk later.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll talk later.
I guess, you know, obviously YouTube has done a phenomenal thing, right? It's really opened up content to people all over the world, anytime, any place, anywhere. And really, it speaks to the heart of one of our big challenges in digital media per se is, you know, traditionally, the biggest challenge for a content creator was how do you distribute that show that I've just made? And so you have to go to a network and say, here's my pitch, will you put it on air? And that was the measure of success. Of course, those barriers to entry now have been completely eliminated. Even content creation, the barriers to entry have been really minimized. You know, anybody can go out and shoot a piece of content now. Anybody can go and get it distributed, whether that's on YouTube or, you know, a more premium platform like Yahoo. The challenge we have is once we get it up there, how do I drive 10 million people to the content, which has traditionally been in digital, the only way that we've been able to monetize content is through volume. But I think what we're seeing more and more is how do we define that notion of premium content? You mentioned the word premium. What does that mean anymore, right? Is the cat jumping up on the bed that gets 10 million views on YouTube, is that a premium piece of content? Or are we going back to the sort of traditional notions of premium, which are high production values, sort of House of Cards type, you know, production values? So I think, you know, what we need to do as an industry in digital is look beyond the volume and the big numbers, right? Because that's where the MCNs are sort of coming in, because they are able to aggregate the content and get those numbers which satisfy advertisers. But if we can define the new metric which goes beyond the 10 million views and actually show how people are engaging more with content online or in digital spaces, how the experience they get there is above and beyond what you can get from a two-way television linear experience, I think that's where the industry will be more successful for the long term.
Understood. But as you look at strategy for what you're trying to build, does YouTube have a central role in that strategy for the content that you create?
For Yahoo?
For Yahoo.
I don't think so. I think, you know, there's a value to keeping
Your strategy is to drive viewership on Yahoo.
right. But I think, you know, it's interesting for us to look at what happens on YouTube for sure. And, you know, it's definitely a playground for, you know, creativity that we can learn a lot from. But, you know, I think there's a value for us being not just, you know, when you look at Yahoo, it's not just a video experience when you go there. It's a completely 360 content experience. We're one of the few media companies in the world that produce video, produce text, produce stills, and we have editorial offices in many, many countries all over the world that are coming together to create, you know, completely immersive experiences. So I think the value for us isn't just in the video, but in that content experience.
And Mara, how about you? With respect to stars, does YouTube play any role in your strategy?
Absolutely. I mean, with the pay TV channel itself, the strategy is much more like Jessica's, which is we put clips, we put trailers, we hope it drives you to get a star subscription. It's a little bit hard to track because there's an extra step for us. You don't just get to go turn on your TV or download the episode from Hulu. You have to then go get the subscription from pay TV. But from my side of the world, we've actually have several YouTube channels. We have How It Should Have Ended, and here's my shameless plug for Union Pool, which is a shorts, little comedic shorts. And we are a very, very, very mini MCN in that we've gone and helped the smallest content producers, you know, the ones who are not going to get picked up by Machinima, who is a very large MCN that fits sort of the genre of the humorous, entertainment-related clips to try and help them monetize. So YouTube definitely plays a role, not so much in the monetization of the episodes of content that we have either on the channel or, frankly, we have a lot of anime content and we have it up on YouTube. But to Jessica's point, Hulu, which, as she said, is owned partially by NBC, is much more effective. I think that's our challenge with YouTube, as a matter of fact. They provide a great platform with lots of users, but they haven't really decided, are they a platform or are they a media company? So they alternate on a day-to-day basis. Here's the platform, do what you want, you know, and it's sort of if you build it, maybe they'll come, and it doesn't always work. And then they flip around and say, oh, we're going to give you a lot of money. Here, take this. So they are definitely a core of our strategy. I think the challenge is trying to figure out how effective they can be and are willing to be and how to make them work for us.
So David, how has YouTube and the MCNs worked for the clients that you represent, or not?
Well, I think, my role is essentially focused almost exclusively on originals. on original content. I'm not so much involved with licensing libraries or repurposing for monetization. With an original content, YouTube is always going to be a part of some piece of the strategy. 60% of all online video is watched on YouTube. So unless I'm specifically selling a show to a different platform, like a Yahoo or a Crackle, or, essentially YouTube is going to become a part of, more often than not, become a part of a distribution strategy. It has not proven itself yet to be a home for long-form content. YouTube has proved itself more adept at short-form or talent-driven channel content. So for me, if I'm representing those channels, or I'm packaging businesses that begin on YouTube as a first window, then it becomes a very big part of my strategy. One of the projects that I was involved in this year is a project called the Lizzie Bennett Diaries, which started out on YouTube as a web series and became a phenomenon in social media. It was essentially an online adaptation of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, told in a contemporary style. And it became a very big phenomenon in social media, and YouTube as a first window was key to that strategy. More key to the strategy was where it was going to live beyond YouTube. Mm-hmm. So I think YouTube is an important part of an online video strategy. I don't think one can really say that if in the originals business you're looking to create a YouTube strategy, you're looking to create an online video strategy, and YouTube is going to be an important part of it, depending on the content that it is. Going back to what Paul said, you talk about premium content. Premium content means different things to different platforms. Premium content for a brand means something very different than premium content than House of Cards, right?
Right.
They're both called premium content, but there's a lot of moving parts depending on the actual project, who's financing it, and what the goals are of the project.
Right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the business models for traditional and in the online world. Obviously, you hear a lot about disruption, that term. My feeling is that disruption isn't necessarily a bad thing. With the opportunity to receive premium video content or premium video quality content anytime, anywhere on your smartphone, something that, as you were saying, people, I think even 3 years ago, weren't expecting that to be the case, that consumers would be consuming it, but that's happening now. So with all of that happening now, in terms of the monetization, there's a lot of experimentation. A couple of you work within traditional media companies as well as, but you're on the online side. What is the feeling within those companies about what you're doing on the online side and whether they can actually make up for the economics that are challenged by this new online world? So Jessica, I'll let you give that perspective.
Yeah, it's a challenge to make it all work, because we're working typically with obviously not episode type budgets for that you would work with on an on-air episode. We're working with digital budgets, which are generally smaller. We're also working to ensure that derivative content that's created with our shows is, in terms of quality, as high as possible. So we don't want to have something that resides in digital that doesn't look or feel like the show. We try to make it feel as authentic and as consistent as possible. And we really feel like, to make it feel legitimate for a fan, it needs to mirror the on-air show as much as possible. So you factor that in, and then you factor in the build itself, which is something that on-air doesn't necessarily have. Yes, they have the episode, but the episode goes on air. What we also try to do is create something around that video so that it's not just you're throwing up webisodes in your player and you're done and you have pre-roll and that's it. Try to create something else that's going to give the user and the viewer more of that story and more of those characters that they love. So whether that's video that users can choose. We did a video series with Covert Affairs where users could choose the outcome, and there were different points within the story, and they could choose A or B, and then the story would go in that direction. So we try to make it so that yes, it's derivative, and yes, they're webisodes, but we also want to use the best technologies to tell those stories, and so it gets. It's a balancing act. We are working with brands. Typically, they're helping us fund part of these. We're also working with the showrunners and with our studio, UCP. And then you add on all of the various layers of development and social, and next thing you know, you're going, okay, I'm not even really sure we're breaking even here. But the good thing is that it's all in service of driving tune-in, and that's what we're really, trying to do.
And Mara, how about you? Do you feel like you're getting the internal cooperation you need when you're trying to experiment in the brave new world of digital?
It depends on what day and in terms of what. I think overall, yes, the feeling is this is something we need to talk about and think about, but we do need to be careful. I mean, you're not going to suddenly go tell Comcast, well, we're going to go do whatever we want. If you don't like it, just stop carrying the Stars channel. Because no, you're not going to make up for the carriage fees that we get right now from selling our episodes online or through Hulu. I think we all agree, though, there is a place where it can all reside, and whether that is what Jessica's talking about, making different content for certain uses, or more of what we do. I mean, we do some of that, but more of what we do, which is we have, there's different content. There's Spartacus and Magic City, and those things reside on the pay channel, and they reside in our, Stars Play app. Eventually, they will, you can buy them online. Eventually, will they be ad-supported on YouTube? Most likely, depending. It's a windowed thing, which I know the consumer doesn't like, but the consumer also actually gets it without knowing they get it. I mean, it's sort of, they're used to it, and there are ways it can get better. I'm not arguing that. And then on the other side, which is the content that's not on Stars, I mean, I think that's where we're fiddling around more now, which is, the content that traditionally came out on DVD first. Well, does that make the most sense? Should it go to VOD? Should it go online? We're even experimenting with some of what David was talking about, content that's designed for YouTube, quote unquote, first window. Can we then move it to the transactional platform? So I think they are embracing it, but it's a careful balancing act. They know better, or we know better than to say, oh, we can just ignore it and it won't happen. But we also can't just lunge forward into it, because no, it's that comment about digital dimes, the costs are lower, but it's sadly true, and people still want high quality content, so it's not like you can reduce the cost of an episode of Spartacus if you're going to put it only online.
Yeah, and you mentioned one of the big cable companies, Comcast, and
I could have said any of them.
yeah, of course, of course, but it does bring to mind the debate that's happening now about unbundling and bundling services and IPTV versus the OTT world. You have Yahoo, you have YouTube, you have Amazon, you have Netflix, Xbox, and the growing list of these OTT services. And you have companies like Intel that are actually trying to become virtual cable operators. And that means they want to carry it all. So they want to carry the ESPNs of the world, the live linear TV, the sports that many think that's what really matters when it comes to the cable TV bundles. So you have this proliferation in the OTT world and the threat it has on the cable world. First of all, do you believe, and I'll ask Paul, I'll ask you this question, do you believe that there will be a time in the near term where there will be unbundling of services or channels like ESPN?
So you could just subscribe
So you can
to ESPN.
subscribe to ESPN rather than the full cable package?
I think any of us who are,
I'll give you like a 2-year time frame.
Yeah, I think so. I think, even sad to say now I'm in my mid-30s and I look back at the young kids who are coming through into our teams, and none of them have cable packages anymore. And I was listening to somebody talk this morning in the same way. He said, I'm 35 and I feel like the old guy in the room because I've got a cable package at home and nobody else does, and all these cord cutters. I think it's going to come, and I think the distribution now that we have of content directly into all the devices that we own, whether that's in the living room or on the handset, means that people are just going to want what they want, and I guess the only issue then comes for those channels who are trying to actually, like ESPNs, are trying to bundle in lots of different pieces of content to sort of increase the subscription model. So I think it's inevitable, right?
David, what do you think? Do you agree with that?
I do. I mean, when you think of college campuses, for one thing, I mean, how many televisions do you think there are in dorm rooms in college campuses anymore? It's all being watched on tablets, on devices and on computers. So, you know, I think it's becoming so much more diffuse in terms of where these platforms are going to live. I think it's really interesting to see what Comcast is going to do with HBO, right? They just announced that they're going to try to. I actually don't know what the formula is, but they're now going to sort of try to make HBO available as standalone. I think HBO
they're
Go.
bundling it. They're bundling it with. It's not really standalone. You have to get internet service
Right.
though, so it's still a bundle,
Right.
and it's not direct to consumer.
But it's not a cable.
Well, and also
it's not a
not.
traditional cable.
Yes.
And you see on the cable side, by the way, that the margins in providing the broadband are much higher than they are in terms of
Right.
compared to delivering the packages.
I
of
think that's
content.
Right.
the next step before the
Yeah.
unbundling.
Right.
It's the kids, and by the way, my stepson is on a college campus. He watches TV everywhere. It's just he just uses our subscription. I mean, it's not that they don't want it. It's that it's too expensive for them right now.
Right.
But I think that's a sign of success to him, which is when I make enough money that I can get a cable package.
I don't think you're going
Mark-
to be able to go back on a la carte. I mean, the audience, I think, over coming years is just not going to want to pay for things they don't use. And I think there's going to be so much more pressure put on the marketplace to provide this for consumers. You know, the cat's out, that genie's out of the bottle. I don't think you're putting that back in.
So Mara, is that a world, the unbundling world, is that a world that you all welcome at Starz?
Okay, so remember, I don't speak really for the channel. I think the answer is, we right now, to some degree, are that. You pay for Starz if you want Starz. I mean, yes, you can be bundled. We can be bundled with Showtime or HBO, and that's a better package. But you know, we sort of feel you pay for us if you want it. You don't pay for us if you don't want it. And what is underneath us is really the cable company's decision. We don't benefit from it other than, you know, well, it makes us premium, but I would argue that the most premium content is the one you pay the most for, and however you define that is you know, do you pay the most for, I don't watch sports. So yes, it drives me crazy that my cable bill is so high and it's because of ESPN, or in theory, because of ESPN. I think we embrace whatever people are willing to pay for us. And as for bundling, I do think it will happen. I'm not sure 2 years is right. I think it's more like 2 to 5. And I think they will try to take an intermediary step like the Comcast. And maybe the first thing is taking something like ESPN out of the package. And you still have to pay for MTV. You know, it's still bundled in, but it's a lesser charge than the ESPN. I don't know.
So we don't have much time, and I want to leave some room for Q&A, but binge viewing a la Netflix, does that have any role in Yahoo and Yahoo strategy or competitive force, or what do you think about it from your perspective?
Absolutely. I think anybody who's been on Yahoo Screen, the new app, the new experience that was launched last quarter, will see that that's really an experience that was built for this binge viewing new model. And it goes back to the thing, people being able to watch what they want, when they want, how they want to consume it. And you know, the whole point of Screen was to really make an experience that was lightning fast, that when people got there, the video loads immediately, the next video loads immediately, so you can really immerse yourself in this, this deep, content-rich experience. So, you know, it is, and I think, you know, interestingly, from a content production point of view, you have to think about how you create content. Now, it goes back to that whole thing about, you know, creating content for platforms specifically to the audience behavior and making sure that you are creating the content to lead them into this binge scenario, right? So, you know, dramas are kind of set up for that anyway, the cliffhanger at the end that makes you want to carry on watching the next episode, the next episode, the next episode. I can't get away from it, and that's why I watched 12 episodes of Damages at the weekend and spent my entire weekend on the sofa instead of playing out in the sunshine with my kid. But point is, you know, like in every kind of content genre now, we need to be looking at how we build our story arcs to make sure, even if it's on a 1-minute news package, right? How do I make sure that when we get to the end, there's something that grips the audience so they want to watch more and more and more?
Very good. So let's have any Q&A out there. It's a good panel, diverse panel, different interests represented. So, yes, sir. Hold on.
Thank you. So I heard the group talk.
And why don't you identify yourself, your name, and who you're with?
My name is Charles Cataldo. I'm with a game clouding company. My question was relative to the team about the use of the YouTube model. And I heard promotional and clip activity. Does any of the networks consider YouTube to be a vehicle for pilot activity? Something that traditionally may have been piloted just within a fixed internal group, but may be used as a focal group atmosphere in between going into production.
Jessica?
I think that's a really interesting idea, and I know it's been experimented with and certainly discussed, sort of like the crowdsourced idea. If enough people view it and like it, then you sort of take it from there. It's definitely an interesting idea. I'm not sure if it's realistic or if it's right for all projects, but certainly, I mean, I think the digital original category is something that everybody's thinking about right now. Certainly, we are as a company. Individual networks as well as overall, kind of how do we play in that space. And as everybody on the panel has talked about, the expectation for digital content is that it look and feel exactly like content that you would see on your TV at home. So it's definitely an opportunity for I think all networks.
Yes, sir. In the back?
I really enjoyed this, so thank you all. Just one quick comment that I'd like some thoughts
Can you
on.
just give your name and...
Sorry,
you're with?
Greg Prozel. I work for Rightster, the European and now States video platform, online video platform and syndication platform. Paul, you mentioned YouTube has created this kind of democratization of distribution. And I think that's almost been part of the problem because we think about it in those terms, but really the vast majority of YouTube videos get very, very little views. Absolutely. And so it's the access to distribution, which has been democratized, but not necessarily the actual distribution. In a traditional model that you were referring to, if I did that distribution, there was going to be a guarantee of how many views I would get across Stars or USA Networks, et cetera. But I'm curious about we talked about YouTube and Hulu was mentioned, but I didn't hear any of you talk about the 5-min AOL or Dailymotion or ourselves or global distribution. I'd just be curious to get some quick thoughts on the thinking regarding working with companies like Rightster and how you go about thinking about third-party distribution.
So, the international opportunity, among other things.
I could give some perspective
Yeah,
on that
that'd be
because
great.
before I joined Yahoo, I actually worked a lot with Rightster and 5min and Grab networks, and there's a huge opportunity there. And you mentioned international. It's funny when you sort of move to the States, nobody really thinks about international. And my first job in digital, even though I was working here in Los Angeles, the US market was actually turned off for me. I wasn't allowed to sell into the US market, and I really had to go overseas and built this huge audience overseas, like over 100 million views a month just in overseas markets. So I think there's a great opportunity to work with companies like yourselves to distribute content. And to your point about YouTube, it's really valid, and I don't think that's unique to YouTube. It's true of every single platform. Discoverability is our #1 issue in digital media. Our digital ecosystem is still sort of driven by headlines and pictures, and so when I think that's one of the things when you work with a company like Yahoo, we really work hard to work with our producers to educate them about. Traditionally, when a producer comes to digital media, they know how to make great programming. When they come to Yahoo, they're typically very, very skilled at making a great program. But certainly what I say to them is, that's kind of like the easy part for us, because we know how to do that. The hard part is, how do I get it out there and discovered by millions and millions of people? So now, part of a digital producer's job is to understand social media, to understand how to work with syndication networks off our own network to get it out there, to build up audiences that are organic to the program and not just rely on the front page traffic of a place like Yahoo. So, for me, that's now part of a digital producer's job that was different to a traditional television producer's job. And some people get it and some people find it hard. It's a lot about now like analyzing data. Every single day, we get information about what the users are telling us, and we want to be able to program content that aligns to our audience behavior and not just content that's produced at the whim of somebody sat at a big long table telling us what to do. So I think all those things become really, really important. And YouTube is kind of, magnifies that challenge, but it's one that transcends the entire industry.
You mentioned data, and that's one of the issues that we really didn't talk about at length. But when you're talking about business models, the holy grail is to be able to reach the consumer with the right messaging from an advertising perspective. And Jessica, you and I were talking before the panel, and your world before was at Saatchi & Saatchi and Ogilvy, among other places. And so why isn't more money being spent online in terms of marketing when the great promise is that now you can I don't know if easily, but you can target the message for the right consumer?
Honestly, I think it's a resource issue a lot of times. I mean, we hear a lot from advertisers, as we're going through the sales process, and most of our deals are 360. So there's an on-air component, and then there's, a digital component, and it comes down to the resources and time to manage the project and get it implemented. I really think I think agencies are starting to evolve into a place where they see that as being important, and it's really hard to do it right. I think we work a lot with, or have worked a lot with in the past, Team Detroit, which is the group of agencies that manages all the Ford business, and they have dedicated branded entertainment people, dedicated digital entertainment people. And that's really rare. I mean, it really is. Most of the time you're working with a media agency, you're working with a creative agency, there's communication back and forth between the two. Sometimes you're in it, sometimes you're not. It can be a lot to manage for these companies. And, the brands themselves just don't have time. They're dealing with, these brand managers are dealing with so many other things related to running their business that they have the agencies manage everything. So we try to manage as much of that process as possible for our clients and try to make it as easy as possible and then of course with my background on the ad agency side, I know how hard that is. So it's even, sort of more perspective for me.
Yes. Go ahead. What's your name?
My name is Gunther. I'm working for Paysafecard.
With whom?
Hello, my name is Gunther. I'm working for Paysafecard. It's in the European leader for online cash payments. And I wanted to say just a few words because we're short to close deals in Europe with Sky and a lot of companies like you. I see it from a kind of different perspective because I think that the main thing what you lack is the right means of payments, and you don't offer it to the people in the right way. So when it comes to streaming from the internet, it's all about advertisement. The people are ready to pay for the content. They want to see their series. Now it's all the question you talked about bundling, unbundling from the cables. In my opinion, the main reason why the kids all watch their movies on their tablets is that either the parents didn't open the right bundle so that the content they want to see, they actually can see as well on the big flat TV, because the parents come home at 6, 8 o'clock in the evening, kids come home from school at 2 o'clock, they would watch it on the big flat screen, but the content is not open there. Now, we are here at the point of bundling. I would not like to pay for my kids all the content, but the operators don't give the possibility to families to spread cost-wise the decision what to watch. Because me, as a father, I watch, as you said, the football or the ESPN thing. My wife doesn't watch this. She's not willed to pay for it. I'm not willed to pay for her series, and I'm definitely not willed to pay for my kids' series. But my kids would like to pay 90 cents if I miss one of the episodes, next day I want to log in and I want to see the episode I missed to catch up with the next episode coming. I have no possibility to pay episode by episode, even if it's just a micropayment, 50 cents, 90 cents to recover, to see what I have missed. So this is a big leak, a big lack, in my opinion.
Just flexibility of
The
payments.
flexibility of payments, and that also families inside, when the parents or the father signs a contract for the whole month, has to decide on certain bundles, and afterwards you have no possibility to make exceptions and to say, well, that football game I want to watch, but I just want to pay for that specific football game, but I want to watch these series, and so on and so on. And this is the main problem the industry faces. If you would offer the payments individually to everybody, people would be willing to pay for the content, and they wouldn't need to see always. It's good to see advertisements for those who don't want to pay. I'm not saying anything bad against that, but much more people would like to pay, but they don't have the right possibility. It's all about credit cards, it's all about bank. The kids can't pay directly with their pocket money to see the episode they want to see. They have to take their tablet, they have to watch it on channels which are not paying you directly for the content produced.
So we have to wrap it up, but any comments to that comment in terms of flexibility of payments and how much that is holding back the ability to really monetize effectively online? Paul, I see you wanting to say something.
Well, I would say it sounds like they should start writing content bundling into marriage vows or something, make sure that everybody is in line. I mean, I think it's really, every morning I go to the coffee shop and I go to Starbucks and I get my latte and it's $3 and I never think twice about it.
No.
And then I go to my iPhone and I'm like, you want me to pay $1 for an app that I'm going to own forever? And I'm like, no way, I'm not paying for that. So I think it'd be interesting. Are people willing to pay for content bundles and or for specific episodes? And if they are, what price are they willing to pay? Because that's our challenge and our struggle with subscription models. I think when the newspaper industry tried to do that online, it was challenging, right?
So it's
The games industry definitely is like this. In the games industry, the dating industry, everywhere you have subscriptions. But if you offer your customers
here's the microphone.
Yeah.
So if you offer to your customers, beside the subscription where you pay for the whole content for the whole month,
Maybe.
as well the possibility to watch this and pay for it, because at the end, what would you do? Return back 20 years. The habit is still in a way the same. If I wanted to see a movie or something, I went to the videotheque, I paid for that specific movie. I wasn't interested in the whole ads. I wasn't interested in anything else but in this video, and I paid for it. And it was cheap. I could afford it. Every kid could afford it. But in the same way, like to go in a videotheque and simply see this one specific episode or video, it's not offered that simple way.
Yeah,
It's
in
a
the
hassle.
music industry, right?
I think
Well,
we have.
music
I think we have to
industry
wrap
then,
it
but-
up.
Sorry. Okay.
Unfortunately.
Sorry.
But that's a great question, right? That the ultimate question is whether the consumers will be like that, acting that way and willing to put down their credit cards. That's what everybody here is struggling with. You have optimists. I'm an optimist. I believe it. I believe that if you have the ability to get this great content 24/7 anywhere you want it, that you'll be able to monetize. And we've seen it in the entertainment industry time and time again, where you've had the threat to theatrical with television. They both survived. Then you saw the VHS tape coming. Theatrical business survived. Then you saw the DVDs, same thing, where DVDs actually became a bigger business from a revenue standpoint than theatrical release. So I'm an optimist, but just really quickly, are you an optimist?
Yes.
Oh,
Paul?
yes, 100%, yeah.
David?
Absolutely.
Personally, I'm a pessimist in my life, but in this industry, yes.
See, there you have it. All right, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.